Hi, okay, so this is finally the video that I've promised on how I use the Elite Spectrum by Instantron machine, which I've had for 6-7 years now. And I want to underline this is how I use it. There's other ways to use this machine. I'm not really going to go into too much detail on the things that I don't use very much because I'm not a specialist on them, but I'll show you how I use it. So in the instruction manual that comes with the machine, Skip has gone into detail to show how you can set it, but I'm going to quickly go through. So I've just turned it on from the button on the back, and if you wanted to just do slow thermolysis, first of all it comes up with both on, so you need to turn off the galvanic and you press it twice until it does that. And as that comes off, here we go, it's just on thermolysis at the moment. Now, if you are going to use it in manual mode, meaning you will control for how long you want it on by your foot, you will turn off the auto setting from here. And if you want to set the energy levels on the radio frequency, here's it tells you, you're gonna tell the machine, I want to set the radio frequency by pressing this button, and the indicator comes on, and then you will go on to energy level underneath there, and you're going to use the arrows to go up and down. I don't really use slow thermolysis, but when I had a Sterix machine, this is what I used to do. I'd just set the energy level, and I knew my machine well enough to know roughly the lower working point for my machine. So I'd get a little bit like at the lower level for the type of hair that I need to treat, and I'll build up if I need to. And I often worked in completely manual mode, so I controlled with my foot on the foot switch how long I want the current on, and that gave me the option to vary the length if I'm working in an area that has mixture of textures, some finer and some more textured hairs. Okay, so this is on this machine. If I was to go for slow thermolysis, it'll be something like, under 1 second for sure still. And I would probably be starting from around that level. But you need to work out for yourself what level you'd be working on. And I rarely work on very fine hair. If I was working on very fine hair, I'll probably start even lower than that. But that would be slow thermolysis. If I wanted to use an automatic setting when I have set time and I want to apply the same amount of time to every follicle, for example, an area that has very uniform hair growth, like all anagen hairs of the same caliber, then I will want to use the auto setting. I will find my setting to start with by working somewhere from like, I don't know, maybe this, it depends what hair really. If it's on the face, I'll probably start somewhere in the 40s with a needle size 5, and I'll try how long I need to actually remove the hair, perhaps over, I don't know, slow thermolysis, you would want something like half a second, I guess, or some people work over 1 second, so you'd set that amount of time as well, and you will start low and work your way up until you get a smooth release of the hair. But the difference with this setting for slow thermolysis is that you'd be using the auto mode, where you have the same amount the current is running for the same time for every hair follicle. I personally don't like that too much because it doesn't allow me to customize things per follicle if I need to do that, like if some are a little bit thicker than others and I still want to have a perfect smooth release on every hair follicle. Okay, that's the slow thermolysis. I'm just going to move on quickly to what I normally actually do. So most of my clients are either faces or body areas. So I work with many trans clients and with many Asian ladies that have thick hair on their face. My starting point that I've worked over time to get to that, but right, we're going to turn this off so it's like we're starting from the beginning. I'll turn my machine on and I'm just going to press this button. And that's the flash setting. So I just press the flash button, and what it does, it turns off the galvanic, turns on the radio frequency for 1/10 of a second on the maximum level of energy. And I would be doing this if the hair requires a size 5 needle. If the hair requires a size 4 needle, the first thing I will try would be somewhere between the 80s and 90s range milliamps of the radio frequency, and that's on the auto setting. Now, if my needle size is 3, my starting setting will be lower. It will be somewhere between the 70s and 80s. And I'll start at the lower 70s and see if that's enough for in one pulse. And I'll build up to around 80 on that setting if I need to, until I get a smooth release. Now, it does vary what I'll go for depending on the hair that I'm working with, obviously. If, let's say, I had a hair that doesn't readily just slide out in 1 second, in 1/10 of a second. If it's kind of a drier hair, like a telogen hair that's been there for a long time, and it has a really wide, kind of chunky white grain of salt at the bottom, that's kind of wide it has a big width, I might go into the energy. So want to modify RF, go to the level energy, go down on the energy level to around the 60s, but go up by 1/10 of a second. And I will try to see what this will give me. Obviously, the first pulse showed me that the skin can tolerate 1/10 of a second in the 70, in the range of the 70 milliamps. So I'm comfortable to try 2/10 of a second in the lower region of the 60s to see if I just needed a little bit more to release that hair smoothly. But because of the dryness, I might want to do it slightly lower, but for longer, I'd try that. And I'm actually been working on a client on a similar setting on an Asian girl's face with laser stimulated hair. And it's doing really well. So just slightly increasing the timing, but reducing the milliamps, the energy level. Now, my aim is always to try and keep to the shortest possible length of the pulse, or the duration of the pulse, because first of all, that's more comfortable for the client, and second of all, I want to try and do as much as I can in the time that the client's on the bed, or to try and clear their face as quick as I can, especially because most of my clients have huge jobs to be done. So I always aim for the shortest time, but there's sometimes that we need to compromise between the comfort level and the duration of the pulse. Sometimes this setting will be more comfortable than the slightly more sharper but higher flash technique on 1/10 of a second in the 70s region, let's say. So I will adapt that to the client. If they're tolerating this well, then great. And if they're not tolerating this well, I'll try and do a faster one that will remove the hair a little bit faster if they're tolerating that better. Right, so for my trans women beards, I will usually start from this and try to remove the hair in 2 to 3. This is the flash technique, just one pressing the flash button. I'll try and use the displacement technique where I put 2 to 3 pulses of this level into different places of the hair follicle and see if that's going to release the hair. If that's not sufficient to release the hair follicle, I really don't want to be doing 4 or 5 pulses because it's taken far too long. What I'd go to is increase the time by 1/10, but decrease the energy a little bit, somewhere in the 90s. I'll try it around there and see how they tolerate that, and whether that's releasing the hair sufficiently. But I would be aiming to do 1, maximum 2 pulses of this setting on a coarse male type of beard hair. That could be a good setting for some deep-seated coarse bikini lines as well, or even men's backs. Something like that is really excellent setting on a deep, moist follicles. Now, sometimes, let's say for an example, fine Scottish type of skin with a red, deep-rooted, thick hair on a face would call for something a little bit more efficient but gentle. And if that's the case, what I will do is I will go on to fast blend. So I don't really use blend, and I've tried some straight galvanic as well, and it doesn't really work for me or on the clients that I have. I haven't come across a case that I would want to use that on. But fast blend is something that I definitely like using on especially upper lips and chins on trans clients, and also on some really, really dry leg hairs. It's happened to me that I need to use it. So I'm going to just show you how to do that. Okay, so you'd start in a flash. Let's say I'm turning the machine on. And as soon as it shows that, I'll say, I want to work in flash. Now, if it's a beard, a male type of beard, I will change the setting slightly. I will want to go to 2 or even 3 tenths of a second. And it, as you see, it automatically changes, lowers the levels of radio frequency. This is really a useful setting so that you don't overtreat. And I will add galvanic to that. And to be honest with you, I don't waste time. So this is 1 second is the shortest amount you're gonna have. I will just go in. Whoops. Okay. I want to modify galvanic, the level of energy. Oh, it's gone up to 0.7 already. So I'll be working somewhere between 0.7 and 1 because I want the maximum amount of action I can get in the follicle in 1 second. So I still want to have a very quick treatment, but I want a little bit an extra kick from the galvanic. How exactly it works, I don't know. Many people say it doesn't, but I did do a video some time ago to show you chemically that the lye formed in 1 second on the tip of the needle at this setting. So something does happen, and I find that for my trickiest cases, usually people from Scottish descent that have very thick red hair on their face, on a rather fine skin, this method seems to work wonders, and works the fastest, as well as they tolerate it quite well. Now, I've gotten to these levels because I've had practice. Obviously, I don't advise people to jump onto these levels straight away. I advise that they start lower, like at 1 tenth of a second and lower level here, and over the course of 2 or 3 hairs, just work their way up when they're sure that the setting is tolerated well from the client. Watch the skin very closely. If you get any blanching, obviously the setting's too high, or you're not in the right place, or you're too shallow in the follicle. So adapt, but you already have these skills, so you don't want me to tell you that. Now, going back to the fast blend, if I was to treat someone's legs that are really, really dry, shallow telogen hairs, what I will be using is a different energy level. It will be somewhere in the 60s or 70s, perhaps. Let's go on to medium 70. And this is only going to be like 2/10 of a second. But also the galvanic might be, the level will be lower. It'll be about half that, or at least that's what I'm going to start with and see how that goes. It seems to just change the moisture in the follicle just enough for that quick flush to be working better and releasing the hairs. And it's normally just on the first clearance. By the second clearance, I find that it's much easier to make insertions and to be removing the hairs. Just the skin response is much better. It's the first clearance normally, that's the problem. Okay, and there's one more setting which I use extremely rarely. Let's turn this off. And that's the micro flash. So if we turn the machine on and we have really fine upper lip hair or facial hair, and you're on a needle size 2 or even 1, I tried using 1 on someone. I don't see the point in it at all. So, but I know that people do find applications for it. But if that was the case and I wanted to work really fast, I'd be going into microflash, and that's 2. If you press twice on the flash button, you see it will go into hundredths of a second, and the lowest is 500ths of a second on the maximum energy, and that will be suitable for really fine hair, like an upper lip one. I personally am a little bit scared to use 100% energy on 0.5 second. I just feel it's too much force over a very short amount of time. So sometimes I try, and this is very tricky for me to manage to do, but let me try and do that. Okay, so I'm in this. I'm just gonna press this button. Yeah, it changes it, right. And while the thing is on, I managed to go in and reduce the energy. So I'm still in microflash, but I've reduced the energy to about 80% of the radio frequency, and it's on 500ths of a second. And you might try a couple of pulses of that on a very fine hair. You know, actually thinking, some people have the odd little hairs on their nose, on the sides, and they want me to treat those. And they're not filaments, these are actual hairs. That's probably the only time I would use this sort of setting, but that's my personal choice. So once again, this is tricky to set, but let's try it. So the first thing was I'd go in microflash, in flash. Then I'd press the radio frequency that I want to change. I would press microflash twice. It will go into that. Then I'll press the level, and with the arrows go down. Okay. I've actually gotten better with setting this. The galvanic is automatically off, and this is your microflash setting. Right. I hope I've given you enough. Please feel free to ask me questions. It sounds very clear in my head, but it might not look clear to you at all. Okay, good luck.